Welcome to Adeptus On Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman. And today I am joined by social media influencer, entrepreneur, and songwriter out of LA, California, Mr. Aaron Taylor. Aaron, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing good. Nice to see you.
I appreciate you coming aboard. Checked out some of your stuff, some pretty interesting content to say the least. Enjoyed it. So kind of give me, when I talk to people who have in that influencer space and so forth, it's very interesting to me because that space obviously didn't exist, several years ago. So kind of tell me how your journey has kind of evolved into this.
Well, it's interesting because when I started doing like music things and making videos, that was not a thing. Like
Right.
Influencer wasn't anything that somebody could actually shoot for to be,
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean people didn't do things that didn't have impact and influence, So
Mm-hmm.
like when I started, my journey of doing videos was around the time that YouTube was like maybe 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah.
And so even though, again, going viral wasn't a thing yet, but that was a time when you could for the first time ever put out just video content based on just things you were thinking about and have people see them.
Yeah.
And who knew that at the time it was going to grow into a thing where you could get followers and millions of views on things. Like that just wasn't a thing. So when I got into it purely because I was interested in writing songs. And when YouTube came along, I had just gotten a camera that takes pictures, but just also happened to make videos.
Sure.
And thought, if I make some cool videos, my family will watch them. Some of my friends from college that knew that I did songs back in college would watch them and they'd enjoy them. And that's literally as far out as I thought. So when I started putting together songs that were getting hundreds and then thousands and then millions of views, it's kind of like you have no concept of that when it wasn't a thing before, Yeah. So it was interesting because when my first song that really went viral was a song that I did about Obama. That was a remake of a Lil Wayne song. And that was the year that he was running for president. And that one song that I put out ended up not only going video viral, but also getting played in clubs worldwide. I would get messages from Kuwait and Germany saying, we heard your song in a club and we heard it on the radio in the UK and all this other stuff. And again, you have no idea how to navigate that because this wasn't a thing up to that point, Sure. But even then, I had a lot of people say, oh, we voted for Obama based on your song. And that was the first time I'd ever thought about the words that I'm saying can actually influence people to do things, Yeah. So it's quite an interesting thing, because that was 2008. So it's definitely evolved a lot more to now to where there are companies that will hire out actors specifically for user-generated content to be able to influence their audience to buy stuff. It's just fascinating how far that's come,
Right. So it's kind of it's almost like a bit of a brand recognition in the sense of because you're your own brand. So what is you talk about that? So now that you are in this influencer space, that was the genesis of kind of how you got there. But now let's talk about it. How are you maximizing that space? What were your strategies for growing it, not only to where it is now, but now to continue to grow it?
Well, the one thing I know for sure is that consistency is key. And so when I started all those years ago, my goal was to put out a song a week for an entire year / music video for an entire year. And I would put it out every single Sunday like clockwork.
Okay.
So people knew every single Sunday they're going to expect me to be there. And I was able to grow my following relatively quickly as a result of that, So now in terms of my influence now, I've got a decent following on TikTok now. I've still got a really good YouTube audience. And so it's just kind of, I like to kind of study trends and see what's going on. But also I know some of the things that I care about and things that I think should be influenced on the world that I also like to get my opinions out across on these various platforms. So, I still am able to do that through song, but also just through talking, through doing skits, through a variety of other ways that get people to see the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So let's talk about TikTok for a second, because obviously a very popular one right now. So, and I want to talk about your content specifically in a little bit. So
Okay.
as you mentioned followers and things like that, as you're trying to grow your followers on TikTok, what strategies? I mean, you mentioned the once a week Sunday thing for consistency, and I think that'll take you to a certain point. But obviously you see people, a video will go viral, or, people talk about TikTok algorithms for how sometimes you can hit people's For You pages and things like that. What is your specific approach with TikTok to try and grow that number?
Well, there's two parts. The first part is like I keep up with the zeitgeist of what's going on, because if you're able to keep up with current events of things that are going on, then it allows you to have conversations in that space. It allows you to make content in that space. For example, this past summer, Kendrick Lamar and Drake were having a back and forth rap battle that was going on. And so that was around the time that I put out a song called Jesus Loves Us, which was a reimagining of Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us. And again, I made it to put out there to show to a few people here and there. And that ended up gaining me thousands of followers on TikTok. And that was just because I was in the zeitgeist of, I know what's going on currently with current rap people, not just I'm back from the old school. It's I always keep up with current stuff going on, because, I know the stuff from my generation that was popular, but the new generation has new things they're talking about. So I try to keep up with that. And then also having a personality, if you're able to kind of define yourself, people know I do music stuff. So I'll put out random freestyles on TikTok, or I'll put together songs that are about things that are currently happening, and people seem to really generate well with that. So those are two of the main strategies that I use at the moment.
Okay, so you were just leading into my next point. So your music, so it's based upon a lot of it, not all of it. It's based upon current event type stuff. Are they are they parody stuff? Are they poking fun at the world, or are they, you trying to educate, or a combination of everything?
I would say it's a combination. I grew up with a lot of influences. So I grew up listening to everything from pop to rap to rock songs, but also I was a big fan of Weird Al. So growing up, because I grew up in a Christian household, we couldn't really buy a lot of music that had a lot of cursing and stuff in it. But Weird Al was just a comedian. And so I got introduced to him early on. So in some of my earlier songs, I would be talking about stuff, but taking a song that was popular, then making it into something else. And then over time, I went from doing that to kind of developing my own style of stuff where I could still be funny, but not always have to rely on parodying things. So these days I do more original content than I do parodies, but every so often something will happen in the news or something will happen out in the music world where it's just oh, I just have a random idea to make my own version of this song. And then sometimes it's a parody. Sometimes it's I'm sampling the song to put my own spin on it. And then a lot of time it's my own stuff. I have producers that I've worked with, and I also produce my own stuff. So it's a combination of all those kind of things.
Well, so you're a songwriter, or do you also write the music itself?
I'm primarily a songwriter. I'm very good at being able to create beats and instrumentals, but I know that for me, it's easier to focus on one thing than multiple things. Because and as an independent artist, it's hard because you're I can do all the hats, I can do marketing, and I can do but you really can't. You can, but there's not time for all that, because the time I could spend putting together a beat, it's the same amount of time I could spend writing, and I write songs faster than I make beats. So, but I can. I have a song that I actually just shot a video for when I was in Bali last week called High Value Man. And I did the entire beat for that because I had put together some songs and I was trying to make that song on another beat, but I didn't own the beat. So I was okay, I have a different idea for the beat in my head. Let me just, and I'm always at home playing with my Pro Tools, my GarageBand, and just to kind of when I have sounds in my head and I just move the beat. So I still do that to this day, but it's easier it's less time consuming for me to write than it is to make beats.
Okay, fair enough. So over the course of a given day, and obviously every day is different, especially when you're, in the entertainment industry, what's a typical day for you? I mean, are you, between the songwriting, between trying to build your online brands, and besides some of the other things you're doing, what's your kind of strategy when you wake up? Are you building are you working day to day? Do you have a 3-month plan, a 6-month plan? What's your process to get from where you are now to where you want to get to?
Well, I don't necessarily write songs every day. It's one of those things where typically in terms of how I put together songs and albums, usually if I'm just doing one-off songs here or there, I always keep I'm constantly recording myself on my phone to get song ideas. But in terms of albums, usually it's I'll have to have some kind of through line. Like I like to create albums that have not a plot structure necessarily, but like an overall idea, you know, because I went to school for theater. So I'm very much used to like scripting and coming through with a narrative of things. Even with my songs, most of the time, like there'll be some kind of through narrative through the song, just because I just like storytelling like that. So, so in terms of like putting together albums and things like that, it's usually like once I come up with a general idea of what I want to talk about, then I can start putting together an album. So for like right now, I'm working on an album that hopefully will come out next year called Organized Chaos. I just always like that title because it's like dueling opposites, but it's like,
of course,
yeah. So it's kind of like the idea of like talking about certain things and other things where they don't seem to go together, but they do, and then having beats that are kind of all over the place, but it still cohesively goes together. So I'm in the process now of starting to write songs for that, and then that'll just be like, again, I keep song ideas on my phone. Sporadically, I'll just be like, okay, I have an idea and a beat together. Let's just make something and record it, you know? TikTok wise, I'm usually just working on like, again, coming up with things that not necessarily that they have to go viral, but just things that I'm interested in, whether it's like, I have a freestyle today, let me record that. Or, oh, I had something happen today while I was out and about, let me record that. Like I said, I just spent like a week in Bali just because I had a friend that was a travel agent that said, hey, we're going on, we have a group tour that's going to Bali. And so while I was there, I was just getting a lot of snapshots of things that I was doing so I can start pushing that so people get like the lifestyle content of what I do. So it's just a variety of those kind of things.
Now, a lot of people hear about, you know, influencers and creators and so forth like that. And, you know, but I don't think people really understand. So if you can kind of walk us through it, how do you monetize it? So, you know, obviously you love what you do, but you're doing this obviously to support yourself and to make a living. So these things that you're doing, especially focusing on the social media side of things, how does those postings and things like that actually turn into money for you?
So it really depends on the platform you're on. My primary platforms for money making on these things are TikTok and YouTube. I've been on YouTube since 2008, and I became a partner like years ago. And so basically with YouTube, how it works is once you get a certain amount of subscribers, I think now it's like you have to have over 500 subscribers. You have to have like X amount of hours, and there's some other metric that they do. But once you get all those, then it's just depending on how many views your videos get, you get paid a certain amount. So, you know, I don't really necessarily talk numbers all that much, but like when
we don't need to talk numbers. I just want to get a general feel for how it works.
Yeah. So, you know, there's no, and they do it based on like the overall amount of videos you have combined with how many views you're consistently getting. So when I put out Jesus Loves Us this summer, I did a video for it and that blew up on my channel. And so that made a lot of money because I think it got like over 200,000 views, you know? With TikTok, it's a little bit different, but TikTok was also like, once you get over, I think it's like 10,000 followers, then they have a variety of ways you can monetize. For one, when you start putting out more videos, after it gets 1,000 views, then you can make money from that video. But they also have other incentives. So they have a program now where, let's say you order a product from TikTok and you want to, you know, you go on there, you make a video about it saying, hey guys, I got this product. They call it UGC content. So user generated content. Hey, I got this thing right here, and I connect it to my computer and it's able to read my cards and it's whatever. Make a video about it. And then if that gets traction and somebody is like, say somebody clicks on my ad for that and then buys it, then I get a percentage of that sale also. So
more like the Amazon store.
Just like Amazon store. Exactly. Yeah. So it's literally like, those are some of the various ways that TikTok allows you to monetize. So I like how these places have set up their structures also, because it makes it very easy to kind of calculate what you're going to make based on the percentages and numbers that they've set up.
Right. Yeah. I have a lot of clients who are content creators, and they do very well from their links to the Amazon store.
Yeah.
And the way that works for people who are listening is basically, you know, they have their own page on Amazon. And if people click onto their page and buy stuff, they're not their own products. They're just things that they're promoting on their page. They get a piece of the Amazon sale. So they're just basically someone who redirects people, you know, onto Amazon.
Yeah, I think they call them like Amazon influencers too. So again, even Amazon's gotten to the influence game because they know, like, it's funny because there's a website that's called backstage.com that a lot of people use to try to get acting work out here in California. And so I've been signed up to them for years also, because I also do acting stuff. And so a lot of the posts they put up now are for user generated content. So all these companies are looking at like, we want people that look like they're naturally talking about stuff in order to get stuff. And hey, that's great, because that means a lot of people that are just at home, they could be in college, do whatever. They have the opportunity, more opportunities now to make money doing that than we ever did, you know, in the early days, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about specifically about some of your content, because I think some of it, as you said, kind of is based upon your opinions, and things like that. So without getting political or anything like that, a lot of your content where you're trying to, as you said, get a message across and so forth. What areas do you tend to find yourself, posting about the most?
Well, I find that, it's funny. I watch a lot of political stuff. And so not that my stuff's overtly political, but I do watch a lot of political stuff. So it kind of influences, how I think about certain things.
Okay.
I know for example, what politicians are talking about versus my experience in things and how that connects. In 2017, I put an album out called the Black Lives Matter album. And that was just because I had a lot to say after, Trayvon Martin's happened and Michael Brown, all those various incidents.
Sure.
And so, especially being a Black man in America, I've had a bit of a different experience because I grew up in like primarily white neighborhoods. I went to private school for my high school, but then I also went to a historically Black college. And then I grew up around like mostly white areas, but my family's primarily Black. And now in California, it's mostly Black spaces. So I've been able to have perspectives of, okay, this is how I, growing up in Black America in a different way, view things. And then based on being around other sets of races, this is how I think they're thinking about things. And it's not always the way that, other Black people might think that they're thinking about things.
Right.
So I just had a lot so that particular album, I had a lot to say just about, police brutality, but also like, what it's like growing up where you're kind of seen as Black, but not really. And then talking about, well, the cops treat us this way, but like, what's the perspective of that? Like, why is it that what background do they come from that makes them see us this way in the first place?
Sure.
So, and I find those kind of conversations interesting because I'm not the person that's like, oh, all of this race is bad or this race. It's like, no, it's a very complex system. And I think that not enough musicians do a good job of talking about the multifacetedness of what that system looks like. Yeah. So that was a personal drive for me for that album. Other albums, like I said, I just have stuff to say. That's whether it's about relationships or about, stuff that's comical. Like I have a wide variety of interest in genres that I like. So I try to touch on those things in a way that's still going to be relatable to my audience.
Yeah, which makes sense. And the struggle that I feel with social media is, for the most part, it's very one way. Meaning, you can say whatever on your mind, but you alluded to the phrase, to have a conversation about something. Well, it's hard for you to have a conversation when you're posting a video. You're getting your point across, and maybe you're going to read your comments and hear people's perspectives, but there is no back and forth unless you're doing, an Instagram live or something like that. So to me, it is good to, I'm on social media, I watch kind of videos, kind of like what you're talking about right now, and you get someone's opinion, but you'd love to be able to go back and ask a question. Or say, well, yeah, I know you're thinking this, but did you consider this? And that's unfortunately the one downside is it's kind of a one way. Here's my opinion. Let's not debate it.
Well, that's I will say, because so I go into my comments a lot. Like, because if I put up something or I say something or talk about something, that, to your point, when you post it up, you're the only person talking.
Right.
But I found the nice thing about what, like, for example, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube do is with those comments, you can, like with TikTok, you can repost somebody's comment that somebody commented on, and then you can like respond to that. So in a way, it's kind of like, it's more like a delayed conversation, like a debate class. Like, I'm going to say my part for like the 3 minutes you watch this video. You're going to put some comment down, which allows you to give your part. And then if I decide to, I can respond to that. And sometimes depending on the comment, like if it's like, go F yourself, I'm not responding to that. I don't
right. And that's the problem also. So many of these comments right now that you see are just to insult someone like you who has the guts to come forward and give your opinion, where a lot of people don't. So it's easy to hide behind a comment, or just people are just mean-spirited in general and just want to put down anyone.
Yeah. And a lot of trolls too. Just like I truly believe part of the internet is designed to like keep us in contention and to just argue. And but like, people that are coming on just to yell, but they're not showing their face. They're just trying to say some mean stuff. Like I very much learned over the years to just kind of like wash that off my back. Like it doesn't bug me to this day. It's part of the game. It is what it is. I typically tend more to like, again, people can disagree, but like if they're disagreeing respectfully, I'll be happy to respond. If they're just like, well, you suck. You're just trolling. I don't care.
Yeah, there's nothing constructive about that. Just, saying something like that. They're just basically just taking a shot just for the sake of, listen, you could say something that I 100% disagree with. Doesn't mean I have to disrespect you as a person. We just have a different opinion on something. And it doesn't mean you can't even be friends or whatever. I mean, I just think family on things. I'm sure you disagree with some of your family or best friends on things, and some of them might be very important topics, whether it was the election or whether a belief about an issue or whatever it may be. But doesn't mean we can't debate it like mature, mature adults. The problem is right now, like you said, there's so many of these people who go out of their way to destruct on these platforms, and it's good that you're able to kind of fight through that, because I think a lot of people get discouraged by the hate.
Very, very true. I think the other problem too is that, people are willing to try to cancel people at the drop of a hat just because they disagree. So like if I say something and then a person doesn't agree, there's the fear of like, oh, well, no, not only do I not agree, but you're being toxic and I'm gonna, and I don't tend to let that kind of stuff bother me, but I know that's a fear for a lot of artists out there now, because it's like, especially if they're just getting their career started, or they're younger in their years. Like I'm a bit older to where it's like that doesn't faze me these days, but like people get afraid of that and then they don't want to speak and then they don't know how to create art. And I think that's sad for artists that are like trying to get a different opinion out there. Because it's funny because like people will disagree with a point and then like 3 years later be like, oh, actually I agree with them. But then by that time you've already canceled the artist.
But here's the interesting thing with that. And I think there's two sides to that. One is, if your objective is just to produce art, then I cancel you. I don't like it. I didn't like what you said. I didn't like your message. However, if your objective is to build your presence on social media and to build your platform, and your revenue streams are coming by people staying with you and following you and keep listening. Yeah. Well, now you have a bit of a conundrum there. Do you do what, not ethically is the wrong word, but do you do what's important for you as a musician, or do you do what's important to you as a business person and as a provider? Because I do think they can kind of butt heads sometimes.
Well, that's always a tough question. And so that basically boils down to like what your ethics and morals are. And that's different for each person. Yeah. I know me, like as much as I enjoy to create, like my initial goal of creating wasn't necessarily for money. Like it's great if I make content that makes me money, but also sometimes it's just expression. I've literally done times where like I made stuff where it didn't get a lot of views or didn't get a lot of sales. I just felt like I needed to make it, and I did. Yeah. And whether people gelled with it or not. So that goes with also like if I have certain opinions about things and people don't agree, it's like I know putting this out there, there's a risk of that. But I'm not all that run by money. And also I found too, you might lose in the short term, but long term you might end up profiting off that.
Unfortunately, though, you'll never quantify that. You'll never know.
Yeah, you never know.
So back to your point, I know you post what you feel, but has there ever come a time where you felt strongly about something, but you thought twice about posting it for fear that, okay, this might have negative repercussions towards me?
I wouldn't necessarily say negative. I would say this, in my 20s, I was down to like, go on Facebook and because that's what people are using, and just type up anything and say anything whatsoever. And as I've gotten older, sometimes like you never know who's watching your stuff and who would potentially want to work with you. So I might have opinions about certain things, but if nowadays I'm like, okay, but like, not every thought that I have needs to be heard. Right. So I've learned that because there are things
that's kind of my question.
Yeah. And the other part too is like, again, it's like, if I'm in certain spaces, I don't know who knows who. So let's say I want to comment on like, oh, this person, won the election, blah, 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 blah. Well, that person might want to hire me for a performance, but now they won't because I said a thing about them. So it's not that, again, every person has to make their judgment on that. So it's like, not that I'm necessarily more careful, I'm just more aware. And then even then I might still decide, well, I still want to say the thing, but like, if I'm going to say it, how can I say it in a way that's not overtly just like insulting? Like, I don't want to ever just put stuff out there to purposely insult people. I want to put stuff out that's like, this is my opinion, but I'm down to have a conversation about it.
Right. Right. No, it's an interesting debate because there's definitely that balance that as you said, everyone to each their own. And everyone has to kind of, consider that. Some people that are just posting silly things, there's really not an issue with that. They're not really putting themselves out there. Like you, Aaron, you give me the impression that you're putting yourself out there because you're putting out your thoughts, your beliefs, and your songs are also dictating your thoughts and your beliefs. A lot of the content creators out there are posting things that aren't really something that could ruffle people's feathers. They're talking about, all right, get ready with me tonight. Or they're talking about, hey, this is how I spent my day at the zoo, and it's entertaining, but you're not really, it's really hard to ruffle someone's feathers, with that kind of content.
Yeah. Unless you like hate their makeup or something or.
Right. And believe me, you'll hear about that in the comments if you do, but they're not generally opinion based where, you're, and again, like I said, I've seen a few of your things, so I didn't get anything that was too, not really anything that was like, wow, where I could think, I wonder if that rubbed anyone the wrong way. But I'm sure, because you seem right now to be a very authentic and, honest person, that I'm sure you've given some opinions out there that some people would disagree with just because people have different views.
Yeah, but I mean that also speaks to like you can put out literally anything, and like I mean I did a whole out mixtape called Black Lives Matter. I'm sure there's people that disagree with that sentiment, and for me it's like again that's fine. I have my opinion on things I want to say based around this phrase, so I'm going to do that. But if you disagree, no harm, no foul. Just listen to something else. It is what it is,
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's crazy. So we kind of talked about it briefly right now. Obviously, your presence is growing, kind of every day with this. 5 years from now, do you see yourself still in the influencer space? Do you think you want to be more on the music production side, or do you always think there's going to be that overlap where you'll kind of be doing both?
Well, it's funny. My original goal in getting into music, honestly, was to write for other people and produce for other people. And I figured at the time when I was living in Atlanta, I didn't have connections like that. So I figured putting out videos, people could see my face, they hear my songs and know how I write. And so I've had some success in being able to work with a few people here and there, but like ultimately, like people start to like my stuff. So it's this weird space of like, because I'm also very introverted. So most of the stuff that I've done from the comfort of my home, whether it's performing, I've done virtual concerts, I've made videos, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, that's what I look at in terms of, okay, I'm trying to expand that now. So like this past year, I was able to get a publicist, as you know. And so like that allows me to reach out to other opportunities and then meet other people. And from there, network into like what other kind of projects can I work on? Because I'd love to be able to like, write something for a movie or like produce something that like, gets big on the radio again. And that like those kind of things, and also working with other artists. Like I love being in the studio with other artists, just being in that creative space, So hopefully within the next 5 years, I'll be doing that kind of stuff where I'm making stuff for movies and writing stuff. And if I happen to have something that goes platinum or gets big again, that'd be fantastic. But I just love the creativity process in general.
Yeah. Well, I think anyone who's in this space has to definitely have that creative side, and that, I'm surprised by your one comment that you said you're kind of like an extrovert and you kind of do things from your house, because in general, you would think of someone in the entertainment arena who wants to be out there. So it's definitely an interesting.
Well, it's funny. Most performers are actually introverted people. Like if you look at like, I remember one time, like someone was interviewing Justin Timberlake and he was like, yeah, like after this, like the hard part for most celebrities is they are introverted because they spend most of the time alone trying to create. But then they got to go. But then when they had the moments of extrovertism, that's when they go out and make music videos or go do a performance. It's just that people want to keep talking to them after that. And most celebrities like, I want to go home. Like if you ever see any interview with Eddie Murphy, most of the time he's like, yeah, I'm at home chilling, except when I go do movies. But then I'm like at home. But people say like he's quiet. He doesn't really talk a lot when he's at his house. He throws parties and he's like the one just sitting there kind of chilling to himself. Like we get our extroverted energy out by creating and by performing. But then once we're done, it's like any other job. Like if I go to work at a bank, I don't want to go home and be followed by people that saw me work at the bank today. Yeah, so it's the same thing. It's just we want to go perform, do our thing, and then be left alone. It's just with celebrity, you're not going to really get that. So, so that's why it's like for years I've been kind of like more so to myself and working on things at home. So I'm just not at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm willing to go out and do things and, kiss babies and do whatever to get more of my stuff out there. Because people like want to see me. So I'm like, hey, I can make stuff available, and I got songs out now that I just put out that I can go perform and stuff like that because people want to see that.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of that, why don't you tell the people listening how they can kind of see you and follow you across all platforms?
Okay. Well, you can go to my YouTube channel at APT Songs. My TikTok is APT Songs. My Instagram is Phil B Trippin, because my middle name is Phil. And I had an APT Songs Instagram, but it got hacked. So that's a whole nother story altogether. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to follow. Like I said, primarily YouTube and TikTok are the easiest ways. You can write to me at aptsongs@hotmail.com. And I have albums on streaming, so you can go to your streaming platform and type in APT space songs, so APT Songs, and you'll find my various albums and songs.
Awesome. Well, listen, I wish you nothing but continued success. I enjoy talking to you. It's always good to get a different perspective on how the industry works. And like I said, I wish you nothing but good success.
Thanks. Appreciate it. This has been great.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.